Welcome to Joe's Astrology, and this is the birth chart of Mark Passio, YouTuber and owner of whatonearthishappening.com. And I've heard him say that he's had astrology readings before, and someone told him he was a spiritual teacher just by looking at his chart and knowing nothing about him. So we'll start there with that idea that he's a spiritual teacher. We can see his north node here is making a contact with Neptune, and it's in Sagittarius, and Neptune is retrograde, meaning it's like as if he's doing this again in this life. And the north node is moving in this direction, and Neptune would be moving in this direction, but it is retrograde. So it's kind of moving towards that north node, back towards that north node, reiterating this need to do something again. But with Neptune is the cosmic teacher, and Neptune can be a spiritual teacher, someone who sounds very righteous, someone who sounds as if they know more. It's the planet of a Jesus figure, a priest. He was known as a priest in the Church of Satan, which I'll get into. This is definitely one of the signatures of someone who is a priest, not necessarily a priest in a church or a priest in the Church of Satanism or a Catholic Church or anything like that, although it could be. Just a person who has that air about them that reminds you of a priest. And it is in Sagittarius, and that's the sign of teaching, philosophy, religion. So this is where he's moving towards in this life. And with Neptune there, he's already there. He's already there for sure, as we see early on in his life. Very intelligent inventor. With Neptune there, I believe went to a good college. And then again, being the priest in the Church of Satan early on in his life. He also has Jupiter in retrograde in Pisces, and Pisces is ruled by Neptune. And it's making a square back to that node. And with Jupiter and Pisces there, he can be someone who is trying to give spirituality, a giver of spiritual teaching to people. If you knew him personally, he's probably a very unselfish person, someone who tries to help, wants to help, maybe tries to help too much. And South Node is in Gemini, and the Moon. So, general astrology, he's a Moon in Gemini, Sun in Leo. The Moon in Gemini, it's moving towards the South Node, whereas Neptune is moving away from the North Node. The Moon is moving towards the South Node. So this is where we see he's very emotional about his information, about giving his information. And with it being on the South Node, it brings more of a vitriolic. I think he uses that word, vitriolic. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but like aggressive, doesn't sound very nice. That very almost angry and emotional about bringing this information, North Node, Sagittarius, and teaching to the public. His Sun in Leo, and it's in the Sagittarius decan, so he's a teacher. He could be known as a teacher who is entertaining. He's got a good sense of humor. He can be known as someone who's presenting on a stage. Leo, he's also an artist. He's also a performer, a musician. And that is definitely where you see that musical performance aspect. And he's the lead singer, so that's definitely Leo, as opposed to, say, a drummer or a guitarist. Now, being a YouTuber, we don't see any Aquarius. Again, we don't have the birth time, but we have Uranus here. It's at 24 degrees Libra, and it's making a square to that Venus in Cancer. So it's as if he's making his money through the internet and through Uranian teaching. And he's making his money through teaching anarchy. Anarchy is Uranus. And with it being a square, it hasn't been easy. He said it himself. He doesn't make much money. It's been very difficult. And if you watch his stuff and see what he's about, you can see how that could very much be a possibility that he um, struggles to make make his teachings financially sustainable. And Venus is there with Saturn and Cancer. And again, Venus is in the decan of Pisces where it's exalted. And with these uh, planets in Cancer, it's more of that emotional energy we see. He gets very emotional. He cares very much. I talked about this with Moon in Cancer that almost cares too much. And not to say that he does care too much, but one someone's perception might be that he cares so much that um, he's got to be careful that he doesn't hurt himself, uh, trying to protect and trying to. He talks a lot about the things need to happen now, and I'm not sure if that's true, but that could be interpreted as that, where it's like the sense of urgency because of um, how deeply he's affected by what he sees on the earth. Mars here in Virgo, so he's got a Mars opposition Jupiter and Pisces in Virgo. So he's very driven to be analytical. He's very driven to service. He's very driven to sacrifice. And we could see this in the priest type. Um, priests in churches, saints, etc. We see this Pisces Virgo, where the person is willing to sacrifice himself. We also see the vegetarianism, the emphasis on health with that Mars and Virgo, and it's making a square to the nodes. And Jupiter's also making a square. We have a grand square there to the nodes, and it's also making a square with that being a square to the Moon in Gemini. And there is, with that square, you can see that there's a need in this life for him to. He's trying to bring that information and teach it to the public. But with the Mars being square, he's he has to be um, a warrior in this field. It's not something that's easy. That's why you see him angry from an astrological standpoint. You see him angry because he's really has to channel his inner warrior in this life to get that done. As opposed to, let's say it was a Mars trine the North Node. Mars was in Leo, or it was trining the North Node. It's squaring the nodes. We also see Saturn. It's in Cancer, and it's making a trine to the Jupiter. And Saturn in Cancer is in its fall, so um, more evidence of him not having not having a strong Cancer emotionally. It's why we see he's very emotional, and it's making a trine to Jupiter, even though it's in water and it has that emotional aspect to it. That Jupiter's Saturn trine is a strong aspect that makes him very responsible. Um, is a strong sense of duty. And one more thing I just want to point out, that there is a lot of emphasis on this Gemini, Sagittarius, Pisces, Virgo axis. So this is a guy who he talks about balancing the brain, the right brain, the left brain, and how people are brain damaged, etc. And I'm going to talk about this in future videos, that you can see this in the astrology. And certainly in his astrology, this is a very intelligent person, a even though um, it, he may have worked very hard to, in his opinion, or in his opinion, but his perspective, his story, he worked very hard to balance his brain and to get to a point of um, real intelligence, as he would say. This chart shows that with the Gemini, the balance of Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces. It also shows the struggle to achieve that in this life, as opposed to being born with that. And we can see in other charts what he's talking about, where they're, and I mentioned it in some of the other videos, where people, you can see that they're very unbalanced when it comes to this aspect, and we can really see that there's some research to be done here in what he's saying about the balancing of the brain. He's got a Pluto moon trine, and that is more of that occult, Pluto being the planet of the occult. So we don't see much Scorpio, at least in this, without the houses here. But he does have Pluto moon, uh, which is making him, very adept psychologically, especially with being a moon contact. And we see one more thing there is with this Pluto here, we see the inner planets on the backside of that Pluto. This is a person who has more experience in what he's talking about, um, as opposed to it being new and he's just learning in this life. We do have the couple of the outer planets here, but most of the inner planets are, all the inner planets are on this backside. So it's more, he's coming to fruition with his teachings. He's very, in this life, he's very meant to be a spiritual teacher. We can see here with this more balsamic phase, more last quarter phase. He is very um, idealistic, especially with that Mars Venus here. We can see a person who's very idealistic. Also comes along with the music, the musical ability, and Neptune being prominent with that North Node. And Jupiter here, speaking of phases, it's in a gibbous phase to that Pluto. And with that Jupiter being retrograde, Neptune retrograde, the gibbous phase, he's really in a state of um, self-improvement, just improvement in general, and the analytical aspect I talked about with the Virgo, really analyzing his teaching and what he wants to bring to the public. And you can see with how thorough he does things, as opposed to maybe some other spiritual teachers where they just come out and they just start talking, and there's no data, there's no concrete physical information. They just come out. Think of these gurus and preachers, they just come out and start talking. With him, there's just constant analyzation. You can see it in the presentations he does. He's going over things over and over and over again. Very, very thorough with that Jupiter gibbous phase to Pluto. Please like the content if you want to see more, and subscribe to the channel. And I am available for readings, so please email me. I'll have my email below if you'd like a reading, and have a great day.